You know, for pretty much all of human history, our world ran on muscle, wind, and water. That's it. Progress moved at the speed of an ox, or depended entirely on whether you lived near a fast-flowing river. But then, one invention came along and just shattered those limits, completely remaking civilization. This is the story of the steam engine and how it lit the fuse on the industrial age. I mean, really think about that. Everything we did was held back by these forces. You couldn't just build a factory wherever you wanted. You couldn't sail a ship against the wind. Humanity's potential was literally tethered to geography and the whims of the weather. Our entire world was changed to the limits of nature. So that leads us to the big question, right? How on earth did something as simple as steam, the same stuff that fogs up your bathroom mirror, become the force behind a new era? How did we go from boiling water in a kettle to building the modern world? To really get the massive impact of the steam engine, we have to look at the world before it existed. And honestly, it was a world that was just starved for power. There was a hard ceiling on what we could accomplish. For centuries, these were the only tools in the toolbox. Human and animal strength, powerful, sure, but they get tired. Windmills, totally useless if the wind isn't blowing. And water wheels, well, they were the best we had. But you had to build your entire operation on the bank of a powerful river. Everything was slow, local, and just unreliable. So, civilization basically hit a wall. To expand, to connect, to build bigger and faster, we needed a whole new kind of power. One that worked on demand, didn't get tired, and could be set up literally anywhere. The stage was absolutely set for a revolution. And that revolution, it didn't start in some big, shiny factory. Nope. It started deep underground, in a cold, dark, flooded mine. There was this urgent problem that demanded a crazy new solution from an inventor named Thomas Newcomen. See, as Britain got more and more hungry for coal, miners had to dig deeper. But the deeper they dug, the more they hit groundwater. The mines were constantly flooding, threatening to shut everything down. They desperately needed a way to pump insane amounts of water out day and night. This was a life or death problem. And this was the answer. Newcomen's engine was a work of genius. Now get this, it didn't use high-pressure steam to push the piston up. That's not what it did. Instead, it used low-pressure steam to create a vacuum inside the cylinder, and then it let the weight of the entire planet's atmosphere do the real work, pushing the piston down. The process was actually pretty straightforward. First, you fill a big cylinder with steam. Then you spray in a jet of cold water. That makes the steam instantly collapse back into a tiny bit of water, creating a vacuum. Now, the air pressure on the outside of the piston is way stronger, and it slams the piston down. It was clunky, it was slow, but wow, for the very first time, we had harnessed fire to do mechanical work on a huge scale. Okay, so Newcomen's engine was a breakthrough, for sure, but it was also a total gas guzzler. It burned through mountains of coal. It took another genius, James Watt, to look at this thing and see its one fatal flaw. He didn't invent the steam engine, he perfected it. And that changed everything. So the big problem with Newcomen's engine was all about waste. Think about it. You heat the cylinder up with steam, then you cool it right back down with water over and over again. All that energy spent reheating the metal was just gone. Watt realized that was the critical mistake. His brilliant idea? Do the cooling part somewhere else. And that was the game changer. By adding a second, separate chamber just for condensing the steam, Watt could keep the main cylinder hot all the time. The steam's energy went straight to doing work, instead of just reheating cold iron. It sounds like such a small tweak, but this one idea made the engine incredibly more efficient. How much more efficient? Well, it saved an incredible 75% on fuel costs. 75%! All of a sudden, steam power wasn't just for coal mines anymore, where coal was basically free. It was now cheap enough to use anywhere, for anything. But Watt didn't stop there. He then figured out how to add gears that turned the engine's clunky up and down pumping into a smooth, spinning, rotary motion. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The steam engine was no longer just a pump. It was now a universal power source ready to turn the wheels of, well, everything. So now you have an efficient engine that can power anything. The world was basically sitting on a powder keg of innovation, and Watt's engine was the match. What came next was a total explosion of industry, travel, and growth. And you really can't overstate how huge this was. For the first time ever, you could build your factory wherever it made the most sense.
near a city for workers or a port for shipping, industry was finally free from the riverbank. And cities started to boom, all powered by these new steam-driven hearts.
The change in transportation was just mind-blowing. Crossing the Atlantic by sail could take 40 days, if you were lucky with the weather. But by 1838, the SS Sirius did it in just 18 days, running entirely on steam power. The oceans went from being massive, unpredictable barriers to becoming reliable highways for trade and travel.
And on land, the change was even faster. Look at the U.S. railroads. In just 30 years, the country went from having a few hundred miles of track to over 27,000 miles. An entire iron web stitched the continent together, and every single train on it was pulled by a steam locomotive.
And the dominoes just kept falling. Mass manufacturing suddenly became possible. Global trade exploded. Cities swelled as people moved for work. And the very foundations of our modern economy were built, all on a bedrock of coal and steam. So, what's the lasting legacy of this incredible invention? Well, it turns out that the fundamental principle behind it, the science it unleashed, is still at the heart of our world today. What we're really talking about here is thermodynamics. It's the science of turning heat into useful motion. You're taking the chaotic, expanding force of hot gas, and you're channeling it, focusing it to do precise, powerful work. It's beautiful, really. And this core idea, capturing the force of expansion, is the direct ancestor of almost every engine that came after it. The internal combustion engine in your car? It's just a series of tiny controlled explosions. The massive turbines in our power plants? They're spun by high-pressure steam. They are all the children of Newcomen's and Watt's original vision. This quote just nails it. The factories, the railroads, the giant cities, those were all the effects. But the cause? The cause was the simple, world-changing idea of heating water in a box and capturing its incredible power. The steam engine was the ultimate force multiplier of its time. It took human ability and amplified it in ways no one could have imagined. So that leaves us with one last big question to think about. What's our steam engine? What invention right now is multiplying our civilization's power and potential on a global scale?